Let's take a journey back to a time when life felt a bit simpler, and every little moment was an adventure waiting to happen. Picture this. The snap of opening a fresh pack of baseball cards was more than just a sound. It was the start of a quest to find that one elusive card, the ticket to bragging rights on the playground. For so many kids, trading baseball cards wasn't just a hobby. It was a ritual, a real highlight of school recess. You'd see groups of friends huddled together, eagerly sifting through their stacks, ready to swap doubles in hopes of landing a prized player. That first whiff of bubblegum when you ripped open a new pack? Nothing quite like it. You'd anxiously flip through the cards, hoping for your favorite, while memorizing stats and debating who was truly the best on the team. And those really special cards, they were handled like treasures, slipped into plastic sleeves, only traded for something truly spectacular. Sometimes the value of a card would skyrocket years later, and if you'd let it go in a trade, that sting never quite faded. But it wasn't just about the cards. It was about the friendships built on those trades, memories that stuck around long after the final school bell rang. Now, let's talk about music. Before playlists and streaming were even a thought, music was all about the experience, something you could actually hold in your hands. The 8-track player was the king of portable tunes, and popping in a chunky cartridge was the start of a personal concert. You'd carry your player to a friend's house or out to the park, sharing the latest hits and swapping recommendations. Every new 8-track tape was a badge of honor in your growing collection, lined up on a shelf for everyone to see. And there was something about the clunk as the player switched tracks, a sound that became the backdrop to so many afternoons. Music back then wasn't just heard, it was shared and lived. Sitting in a circle with friends, letting the latest rock or soul track fill the room, that was as good as it got. Saturday mornings? Now those were sacred. The living room would transform into your own personal theater, ruled by cartoons and sugar-packed cereal. You'd plop down in front of the TV, bowl in hand, and get swept up in the mysteries solved by Scooby-Doo and the gang. Then maybe laugh along with the silent antics of the Pink Panther, who somehow managed to outsmart everyone without saying a single word. Those mornings felt endless. Just you, your favorite pajamas, and hours of colorful adventure. Cartoons weren't just background noise, they were an event, a weekly tradition that every kid looked forward to. Even now, the memories of those animated worlds are just as vivid as they were back then. But the fun didn't stop at the TV screen. Step outside and you'd find neighborhood streets that doubled as playgrounds. Kids played hide and seek, tag, kickball, anything and everything, until the streetlights flickered on and it was time to head inside. After school, backpacks were all but forgotten as everyone raced out the door, ready to pick teams and squeeze in as much fun as possible before sunset. There was a kind of magic in those moments. The laughter, the shouts, the sense of freedom that came with playing under the open sky. Parents didn't worry much because the neighborhood felt safe, like a big extended family. The only rule was to be home by dark. Simple joys, zero screens. And then there were the roller skating rinks. If you grew up in the 70s, you know they were the place to be on a Friday or Saturday night. The disco ball spinning overhead, lights reflecting off the polished wood floor, and the latest hits pumping through the speakers. It was impossible not to feel the excitement. You'd lace up your skates, maybe a little nervous, and then push off for a night of gliding, spinning, and showing off your best moves. Every song was a chance to try something new, to laugh with friends, or maybe, if you were lucky, to hold hands with your crush during the couple's skate. The smell of leather skates, the sound of wheels on the floor, all it takes is a whiff or a familiar song, and you're right back in those carefree nights. But let's not forget about toys. Star Wars action figures were more than just plastic. They were the center of entire universes built on living room carpets. Each character, from Luke Skywalker to Darth Vader, was a hero or a villain in the stories you and your friends made up on the spot. Opening a brand new action figure was a thrill, and every addition to your collection was a victory. These weren't just toys. They were creative fuel, bringing the epic battles of the movies right into your hands. Trading them became an art form, learning the value of negotiation long before you even realized it. Even today, those old figures are cherished, reminders of a time when your imagination was the only limit. And speaking of imagination, the arrival of video games completely changed the game. Literally. The first time you saw Pong, with its simple beeps and bouncing pixel, it was like a look into the future. Then came Space Invaders, and suddenly, your living room was an arcade. Friends would crowd around the TV, taking turns, battling for the high score, and bragging rights. The graphics were basic, the sounds were simple, but they were absolutely iconic. These early games sparked a brand new culture, one that's still going strong today. They were more than just a way to pass the time. They were the foundation of a revolution in entertainment. Let's keep rolling with more unforgettable blasts from the past. Next up, the legendary banana seat bicycle. If you grew up in the 70s, you probably remember that unmistakable, long, curvy seat, sometimes finished in glittering vinyl, sometimes a wild color that made your bike stand out from the crowd. These bikes were more than just a way to get from point A to point B. They were your ticket to freedom, your first real taste of independence. You'd zoom down the block with your friends, racing at full speed or popping wheelies, feeling like nothing could stop you. Helmets? Not even on the radar. It was all about the wind whipping through your hair and the thrill of the ride. Everyone personalized their bikes too. Stickers on the frame, streamers fluttering from the handlebars, or maybe a playing card clipped to the spokes so it made that perfect rattle as you sped along. Neighborhoods were alive with the sound of laughter, shouts, and friendly dares as you challenged each other to see who could jump the farthest or race the fastest. These bikes weren't just for getting around. They were an extension of who you were, a badge of honor. Now, let's talk about a household icon that's pretty much disappeared: the rotary phone. There was a time when every family had at least one, usually mounted on the kitchen wall or sitting on a side table with a coiled cord that could stretch halfway across the room. Calling a friend meant actually knowing their number, or at least having it written down in a well-loved address book. Each digit you dialed required a satisfying spin of the wheel, punctuated by those little clicks as it rotated back. There was a kind of anticipation every time you made a call, especially if you were hoping to catch your crush or best friend at home. Mess up a number? No backspace here. You'd hang up and start all over. And if you called during a busy time, you'd get that classic busy signal, which somehow made it even sweeter when you finally got through. Those long cords were perfect for sneaking into the pantry or stretching around the corner for a little privacy, at least as much as you could get with everyone else in the house listening in. It was a different kind of connection, literally and figuratively. Television was a whole different world too. There was no such thing as watching whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. Instead, the whole family would gather around the TV at a set time each week, ready for the next episode of shows like Happy Days or The Brady Bunch. These were true events. If you missed an episode, you just had to cross your fingers for a summer rerun because there was no pausing, no streaming, no recording. The anticipation built all week, and when the theme song kicked in, it felt like a celebration. These shows weren't just entertainment. They were part of the fabric of family life. You'd talk about the latest plot twist at the dinner table or with friends at school the next day. Parents and kids watched together, laughing at the same jokes or groaning at the same dad jokes. TV moments became inside jokes, pop culture touchstones, and shared memories that lasted way beyond the closing credits. And let's not forget about the thrill of mail-order catalogs. Every season, a thick, glossy catalog would land in your mailbox, packed with everything from toys to clothes to the latest gadgets. You'd spend hours flipping through the pages, circling the things you dreamed of owning. Around the holidays, the Sears Wish Book was basically a kid's version of a treasure map. You'd make lists, drop hints, and hope that just maybe one or two things would show up under the tree. Ordering something was an exercise in patience. You'd fill out a form, maybe persuade your parents to write a check, and then mail it in. The waiting game began. Sometimes weeks would pass before your package arrived, but when it finally did, the excitement was off the charts. It made every delivery feel like Christmas, no matter what time of year. School life had its own set of rituals too. Before the days of digital everything, kids had to master penmanship, and nothing beat the feeling of a fresh box of crayons or a newly sharpened #2 pencil. Brown bag lunches were the norm, packed with sandwiches, fruit, and maybe, if you were lucky, a little treat. Trading snacks in the cafeteria was a daily negotiation, and there was always that one kid whose mom packed the best desserts. Recess was a non-stop blur of action. Jump rope, dodgeball, hopscotch, and foursquare. Playground equipment was made of metal and wood, and you learned pretty fast that sliding down a metal slide in the summer sun was a lesson in physics, and sometimes pain. But bruises and scrapes were all part of the fun, and everyone wore them like a badge of honor. Then there were the school projects. No internet to help, just encyclopedias, library visits, and maybe a trip to the local museum. Science fairs were a big deal, and kids got creative with baking soda volcanoes, solar system models, and all sorts of DIY contraptions. The pride of seeing your project on display was unforgettable, especially if you took home a blue ribbon. Neighborhood ice cream trucks were another thrill, rolling down the street with their unmistakable jingles. Kids would scramble to find spare change, chasing the truck for a bomb pop, drumstick, or maybe a push-up pop. There was a special kind of joy in those first bites, sitting on the curb with friends, savoring a treat that always tasted like summer. And who could forget family road trips? Piling into the station wagon, no seatbelts required, and hitting the open road with a stack of maps and a cooler full of snacks. The back seat was a world of its own. Games of I Spy, license plate bingo, endless rounds of Are we there yet? The scenery rolled by as you counted cows, looked for funny signs, or made up stories about the places you passed. Rest stops meant stretching your legs and maybe picking out a souvenir postcard or two. Let's wrap up our stroll down memory lane with a few more things that truly defined a 1970s childhood. A time when the world just seemed a little bit bigger, and every day was an open invitation to explore. Remember when birthdays weren't about elaborate party venues or themed goodie bags, but more about backyard games, homemade cakes, and a gang of friends running wild? Pin the tail on the donkey, musical chairs, and duck duck goose were standard fare. Presents came wrapped in shiny paper, and the biggest excitement was tearing them open to see if you finally got that toy you'd been hinting about for months. After cake, everyone would head outside for hours of tag or Red Rover, burning off all that sugar before the parents called you in. It was simple, it was joyful, and it was perfect. Another lost gem, the corner store. Every neighborhood had one, a little shop packed floor to ceiling with penny candy, comic books, and cold bottles of soda. A buck in your pocket felt like a fortune. You take your time, agonizing over which sweets to pick, maybe grab a pack of baseball cards and chat with the owner who always seemed to know everyone's name. These shops were more than just places to buy things. They were gathering spots, little hubs of community where you caught up on local news and swapped stories while leaning against the counter. Let's talk about Saturday afternoons at the movie theater. No streaming, no on-demand, just a single screen, a long line to get tickets, and the smell of buttered popcorn hanging in the air. You'd pool coins with friends for a matinee double feature, sitting in the dark, totally absorbed as the latest adventure flick or animated feature played out on the giant screen. The sticky floors, the creaky seats, and the thrill of seeing your heroes larger than life. Those memories are hard to beat. And who could forget the art of letter writing? Before texts and emails, if you wanted to stay in touch with a pen pal or a cousin out of town, you'd sit down at the kitchen table, grab some lined paper, and pour your thoughts onto the page. Maybe you'd add a doodle in the margins, or tuck in a sticker for good measure. Then you'd lick the stamp, drop the letter in the mailbox, and wait for a reply. There was something magical about getting a letter addressed just to you, reading it over and over, and feeling connected across the miles. Let's not leave out board games and puzzles, a huge part of family nights and rainy days. Monopoly, Life, Clue, and Sorry were always in rotation, their boxes a little battered from years of use. Games could last for hours, alliances were made and broken, and sometimes, yes, the rules got a little fuzzy. Jigsaw puzzles took over the dining table, with everyone pitching in to find that one missing piece. These games brought everyone together, sparking laughter, friendly arguments, and memories that stuck around long after the pieces were packed away. And, of course, the TV guide. Every week a brand new copy would arrive, and you'd flip through it, circling the shows you didn't want to miss. Maybe you'd even get into a friendly debate over which family member got to pick what to watch when two favorites overlapped. The guide was your roadmap to the week's entertainment, and sometimes just reading the descriptions was almost as fun as watching the shows themselves. Then there were the school book fairs and scholastic order forms. Teachers would hand out those thin, colorful catalogs, and you'd spend ages picking out the books you wanted. Maybe you'd save up your allowance or talk your parents into just one more mystery or adventure novel. When the big box finally arrived, the classroom buzzed with excitement as everyone tore into their new books. For a lot of kids, these were the first books they got to pick out themselves. A huge step toward loving reading for life. Summer nights brought a different kind of magic. Fireflies blinking in the dark, the smell of fresh cut grass, and the distant sounds of a neighbor mowing their lawn. You might play flashlight tag, roast marshmallows over a backyard fire, or just lie on your back, counting stars and making wishes. There was a sense of freedom, of endless possibility, that made every night feel special. Music, too, was woven into everyday life. Maybe you had a little AM/FM radio by your bed, listening to Casey Kasem's Top 40 Countdown, trying to record your favorite songs onto a cassette tape, timing it just right so you didn't catch the DJ talking. Making mixtapes for friends or crushes was an art form, and every song choice mattered. Holidays were their own kind of wonderful. Halloween costumes were homemade or pieced together from whatever you could find in the closet, and the thrill of trick-or-treating after dark was unbeatable. Christmas meant tinsel-covered trees, handmade ornaments, and the slow unwrapping of gifts early in the morning. Every family had its own traditions, its own quirks, and those little rituals are what made the season memorable. Even school had its share of forgotten traditions. Remember covering your textbooks with brown grocery bags or colorful contact paper, or putting together a diorama for a class project, complete with clay figures and cardboard trees. The smell of mimeograph paper and the sight of a freshly chalked blackboard are memories that stick with you. All these things, the card trading, the Saturday cartoons, the neighborhood games, the music, the bikes and phones and family shows, are more than just relics. They're the threads that wove together a generation, creating a shared language of memories and nostalgia. Some of these moments might be gone for good, but the stories live on, passed down every time we take a moment to remember and share. If you loved this journey back to the 70s, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and leave a comment with your favorite childhood memory. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep those memories alive. That's the American way.